I am Dr. Isabella, a 32-year-old dentist and soon-to-be entrepreneur. I tied the knot 2 years ago with Larry, a mechanical engineer 4 years my senior. We have lived together in my apartment since he transferred his previous residence to his ex-wife following their divorce. That part of his history remains largely unknown to me, as I've never felt the need to pry. Our life together has been largely fulfilling. My career in dentistry provides a comfortable living, yet I've always aspired to achieve more. This ambition led me to save diligently, cutting back on small indulgences, with the dream of opening my dental practice. "You should do it, Isabella," Larry encouraged one evening while we lounged on our aging sofa, the TV humming in the background. "You'd excel at managing your own business." His unexpected enthusiasm caught me off guard. "Really?" I responded, and he confirmed with a nod as he sipped his beer. "Absolutely. My wife, the business owner. Sounds good, doesn't it?" His words brought a smile to my face. It did sound appealing. "It'll require a lot of effort," I cautioned, "and significant financial investment. We'll need to tighten our budget for some time." Larry, undeterred, waved off my concerns.
Don't worry about that.
"We'll manage. I'll support you during the first year while you establish the business. Just focus on making your dream a reality." His unwavering support and belief in me warmed my heart. Motivated by his encouragement, I said, "Let's do this." The following months were a blur of activity. I left my job at the dental clinic and dove into the myriad tasks of starting a business, obtaining licenses, scouting the perfect location, overseeing renovations, and purchasing equipment. Each day brought new challenges and decisions. Finally, after extensive preparations, my dental office was ready. Standing in the doorway, I admired the sleek new equipment, the smell of fresh paint, and the neatly organized waiting area. It was all mine. Locking up after a long day, a mix of excitement and anxiety churned within me. Tomorrow, I will welcome my first patients. It was a moment of truth. I was on my own now, ready to succeed or face the consequences. The initial months of running my practice were intense. I worked from dawn until dusk, 7 days a week, barely taking breaks to eat or sleep. My office became my primary residence. In a sense, I spent more time with my dental chair than with my bed. "Dr. Isabella, your next patient is ready," my receptionist, Denise, would announce as I hurriedly finished my lukewarm coffee. "Thanks, Denise." "Send them in," I'd reply, as the cycle of appointments and paperwork continued. Operating my own business was both draining and thrilling. Larry and I, due to our conflicting schedules, became like ships passing in the night. When I left for work, he was still asleep. When I returned, he was already in bed. We communicated through quick notes and brief text messages. One day, during a rare slow period, I texted him, "How's work?" The response, "Fine," came hours later, leaving me somewhat disappointed. But before I could ponder his terse reply, I was needed for another patient, and thoughts of Larry were pushed aside. Time flew as I focused on my practice. Seasons changed subtly as spring turned to summer, and then to fall. Despite the challenges, my patient list gradually expanded, signaling the slow but steady success of my endeavor. I was beginning to recognize some familiar faces among my patients, which was reassuring. "You're doing great, Dr. Isabella," Mr. Gabriel, one of my earliest patients, complimented during his checkup. His words brightened my mood. "Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. Your encouragement means so much," I replied, genuinely uplifted. Yet, for every moment of pride and progress, there were equal parts stress and doubt. Some nights, I would return home utterly overwhelmed, tears escaping as I doubted my decisions. However, reflecting on my journey and the sacrifices made, I resolved to push forward. I couldn't surrender now. On one particularly demanding day, I arrived home well past midnight. The apartment was silent and dark. As I flopped onto the couch, too exhausted to reach the bedroom, my phone erupted into life. Startled, I scrambled to answer. "Isabella, is that you?" It was Amanda, Larry's mother, her voice laden with concern. "Yes, Amanda. What's wrong?" I managed, suddenly on edge. I've been trying to reach Larry all day. He's not answering his phone, and I'm terribly worried. There's been some sort of scandal at his workplace. My stomach turned at her words. Scandal? I don't know anything about that, I stammered, puzzled and concerned. Amanda's voice wavered as she responded, Oh, I see. Well, if you hear from him, please ask him to call me. Of course, Amanda. I'll speak to him as soon as possible, I assured her, confusion swirling within me. Hanging up, my fatigue was forgotten as I pondered the unfolding mystery. How could there be a scandal involving Larry that I knew nothing about? I found him in our bedroom, despondent and seated on the bed, his head cradled in his hands. His eyes, red and weary, met mine as I entered. We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Your mom called. She mentioned a scandal at your job. What's happening, Larry? He exhaled a tremulous breath. I quit my job, Isabella. About a month ago. The revelation struck me hard. A month? You've been unemployed for a month, and you didn't tell me? His voice was a whisper, barely audible. I didn't want to worry you. You've been so consumed with the practice. I didn't want to add to your stress. I paced the room, trying to process everything. So, what happened? Your mom mentioned a scandal. Larry ran his fingers through his hair, a sign of his discomfort. I disagreed with my boss. He demanded excessive overtime, without proper compensation. I confronted him, and it escalated. I couldn't stay, not with things like that. I had to leave. I was torn between frustration and empathy, wanting to confront his choices, but seeing his dejected state held me back. Sitting beside him again, I asked quietly, What are you planning to do now? Larry shrugged hopelessly. I don't know. I might be experiencing burnout. I've thought about seeing a psychologist, maybe taking a short break to sort things out. Part of me wanted to protest. We couldn't afford a break, not with the new practice barely finding its footing. I was already stretched thin, investing all my energy into keeping the business alive. Yet, looking at him, so worn and uncertain, I realized that we both were struggling under our burdens. A conversation about our next steps, about support and understanding was crucial. This was a moment for us to figure out how to navigate these challenges together, not just as partners, but as a team facing the future side by side. I held back my initial reaction, recognizing that Larry needed support rather than criticism. Okay, I said gently, taking his hand. If that's what you need, we'll make it work. But Larry, we need to be transparent with each other. No more secrets, okay? I need to be in the loop, for better or for worse. Larry nodded, his grip tightening reassuringly. Okay, I promise. I'm sorry, Isabella. I should have been upfront with you sooner. The next morning, I reached out to the clinic where I used to work, inquiring about any part-time opportunities. It felt like a step back, but the extra income was necessary. After securing a part-time position, I shared the news with Larry. He was sprawled on the sofa, his attention fixed vacantly on the television. I got the job, I told him. I start next week. He just nodded, his reaction muted, almost as if he expected it. The following months blurred into a relentless cycle of fatigue and stress. My days started at dawn, tending to patients in my practice before rushing to fulfill my duties at the clinic. By nightfall, I was utterly spent. Meanwhile, Larry began therapy, dealing with burnout and the need for a break, which I supported, though it was challenging not to feel resentful as I saw him resting while I worked tirelessly. About 4 months after Larry's resignation, I came home to find him surprisingly cheerful. Isabella, he greeted me with a burst of energy as I entered. I've got great news. I got a job at an engineering firm downtown. I start next week. A wave of relief washed over me, bringing a weary smile to my face. That's wonderful, Larry, I responded. We decided to celebrate that night. I splurged on a bottle of wine, and for the first time in months, we enjoyed a meal together, filled with laughter and conversation. It felt like we were finally getting back on track. However, my relief was short-lived. A month into his new job, Larry stormed home, his mood dark as a storm cloud. I quit, he declared, tossing his briefcase onto the couch. I was stunned. the plate I was washing slipping from my hands and crashing into the sink. What? Why? I managed to ask. The boss is a tyrant, he spat out. He wants to control everything. I'm not just some puppet he can manipulate. So, what now? I inquired after a tense pause. Larry shrugged. I'll find something else, something better. A place that values my skills and offers me the freedom I deserve. I wanted to confront him, to express how much I sacrificed, how much freedom I relinquished to keep us afloat, but I held back. Instead, I simply nodded, turned back to the dishes, and tried to suppress the growing unease inside me. The tension in our home grew as the weeks passed. Larry spent his days at home, ostensibly job hunting, but I often returned to find him absorbed in video games or glued to the TV. Any luck with the job search? I would ask. Nothing suitable yet, he'd reply, without tearing his eyes from the screen, frustration evident in his tone. These companies just don't understand. I need something challenging, with good pay and flexible hours. Then one morning, Larry broached the subject of starting a family. Wouldn't it be great to have a little one running around? He suggested over breakfast. I could stay home and take care of the kid while you work. It's the perfect solution. I stared at him, my coffee mug frozen halfway to my lips. Larry, we can barely manage our current expenses. How could we possibly afford a child? He waved off my concerns nonchalantly. We'll figure it out. You're doing great with your practice. The conversation left me with a deep sense of foreboding, pondering how we could reconcile our realities with his optimistic, yet seemingly detached, visions for our future. Larry's question about becoming a parent caught me off guard, striking an emotional chord. Of course, I longed for children someday, but the timing felt all wrong. Our marriage was strained, and our financial stability was precarious. I think we need to prioritize stabilizing our lives first, I suggested cautiously, hoping he would see reason. Larry's expression darkened. You just don't get it, he muttered under his breath. You're so wrapped up in work. You can't see what matters. His words hurt, but I was too drained to engage in a futile argument. I simply cleaned my mug and left for another grueling day at the office. As weeks turned into months, the tension in our home thickened palpably. Larry's job search became increasingly infrequent, and his days were consumed by video games. My exhaustion and stress were mounting, and a growing resentment began to take hold. One evening, I arrived home to find Larry setting up a brand new gaming console. What's this? I asked, my voice tight with frustration. He grinned, oblivious to my tone. Just got the latest system. The graphics are amazing. My patience snapped. And how did you pay for this? His smile faltered. I took some money from our joint account. But don't worry, it's an investment. I'll pay it back once I'm working. The ensuing argument was fierce and painful. Months of suppressed frustration and resentment erupted, leading us to dredge up old grievances and inflict new wounds. After that, I decided to stop contributing to our joint account. I handled the bills and necessities myself, leaving Larry out of the financial loop. He was livid, accusing me of disrespect and undermining his role in the household. I'm the man of this house, he shouted during a particularly intense dispute. I should be managing our finances. I responded with bitter laughter. What finances, Larry? The money I make that you spend on games and beers? The atmosphere at home grew toxic. We barely spoke, and when we did, it usually ended in arguments. I immersed myself deeper into my work, using it as an escape from the crumbling state of my personal life. Then, a day came that seemed to shift the tide. At home, doing paperwork, I overheard Larry excitedly talking on the phone in the bedroom. Yeah, I need a new business suit for a job interview, he was telling his parents, his voice filled with a rare enthusiasm. It's a great opportunity, but I'm a bit short on cash. Could you help me out? A glimmer of hope sparked within me. Was he finally taking his job search seriously? However, my burgeoning hope was quickly extinguished. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it. I'll pay you back as soon as I get the job, he concluded. I waited, expecting him to come out and share the good news about his interview. But instead, I heard the familiar sounds of his computer booting up. Curious and increasingly suspicious, I tiptoed to the bedroom door. Peeking inside, my heart sank. Larry wasn't browsing job listings. He was purchasing a new computer game and ordering a case of beer for delivery. The realization that he had lied to his parents for money under false pretenses chilled me to the core. I stood there, frozen, as a profound sense of betrayal washed over me, forcing me to reconsider the sustainability of our marriage and what my next steps needed to be. The sound of Larry's voice echoed through the empty apartment as he defensively snapped back at my confrontation. "It's none of your business. This is my money," he declared, his defiance rising. "My money?" I retorted, disbelief sharp in my voice. "You lied to your parents about needing money for a job interview suit. Now you're spending their money on alcohol and games." The argument that erupted was intense and bitter, arguably the worst we'd ever had. With his face flushed with anger, Larry began hastily packing a bag. "Where are you going?" I asked, my voice hoarse from yelling. "To my parents," he shot back. "At least they support me." The door slammed shut behind him, leaving a stinging silence in his wake. As I sank to the floor, a mix of anger, disappointment, and an unexpected sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe without the weight of our strained relationship pressing down on me. Days passed in silence. On the fifth day, while I was wrapping up with a patient, my phone buzzed. Seeing Larry's name flash across the screen made my heart race. "Hey, Isabella," he chirped, sounding as if our heated argument had never happened. "I'm in Hawaii with my parents. Mom's always wanted to visit, so we made a weekend out of it." I inhaled deeply, trying to maintain my composure. "And how are you funding this trip?" There was a brief pause before Larry replied, less cheerfully, "Well, I had to borrow a couple of your credit cards. But don't worry, I'll pay you back many times over once I start my new job." I felt a wave of nausea at his audacity. "You took my credit cards without asking?" His response came in that wheedling tone I had come to despise. "Come on, don't be like that. It's just for the weekend. I'll bring you back a nice shell from the beach, okay? Have a good weekend, honey." Before I could say anything, he hung up. Something inside me snapped. My hands shook as I quickly opened my banking app and blocked all my credit cards. Next, I called a locksmith. Within an hour, he was changing the locks on my apartment. My last stop that day was at the office of Amy, a lawyer specializing in divorce law. "I want to file for divorce," I stated, the words flowing more easily than I anticipated. Amy's expression was one of compassionate professionalism. "I understand, Dr. Isabella. We'll start the process right away. Can you tell me a bit more about your situation?" By the time I left her office, the divorce papers were being prepared. Stepping out onto the street, the warmth of the late afternoon sun on my face, I felt a surge of hope for the first time in a long time. That evening, as the sun had long set, my phone rang again. Larry's name flashed on the screen. Bracing myself, I answered. "Isabella, thank God you picked up." Larry's voice was frantic. "Something's wrong with the credit cards. They're not working, and we can't pay for anything here. Mom and Dad are freaking out." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation. "That's because I blocked them, Larry. I didn't permit you to use my cards." After a stunned silence, Larry's voice returned, now pleading. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? We're already here on the coast. Can't you just unblock the cards? We'll sort everything out when I get back, I promise." But I knew better now. This was not just about unblocking credit cards. It was about setting boundaries and reclaiming my life. The time had come to move forward, with or without Larry. The sheer audacity of Larry's empty promises almost made me laugh. "No, Larry, I'm done sorting things out for you. You've repeatedly put me in impossible situations, and now you can deal with this one on your own," I said with finality. "Isabella, please," he pleaded, his voice desperate. "You're putting me in such an awkward position. My parents are here, and we have no way to pay. This is your problem, not mine," I replied firmly. "You created the situation. Now you solve it. Goodbye." The next day, I took a personal day off work to clear my head and my space. I spent the morning methodically packing up Larry's belongings, his clothes, books, and the myriad gadgets he had accumulated. It was crucial not to dwell on the memories associated with each item as I placed them in boxes. Once everything was packed, I arranged for his items to be stored at a local facility. A few days later, while at work, my phone buzzed. Larry was calling. I stepped out of my office to answer. "Isabella, I'm outside the apartment, but my key isn't working. Did you change the locks?" His tone was incredulous. "Yes, I did," I replied calmly. "Larry, I've sent divorce papers to your parents' address. You should be receiving them soon." He took a sharp breath. "Divorce papers? Isabella, you can't be serious. We can work this out. We always do." "Not this time," I said, surprised at the steadiness of my voice. "I've packed up your things and sent them to a storage facility. I'll text you the details." "Isabella, please," he begged. "Let's start over. I'll change, I promise. Just give me one more chance." I closed my eyes, past promises and failures flashing through my mind.
"No, Larry."
"It's over. I hope you find what you're looking for, but it won't be with me." As I hung up the phone, a swirl of emotions enveloped me: sadness for what we once had, relief that it was finally over, and a burgeoning excitement for what the future might hold. For the first time in years, that future was entirely in my hands. A few weeks after sending Larry's belongings to storage, an unfamiliar number appeared on my phone. Cautiously, I answered. "Isabella, it's Amanda, Larry's mother," the voice said gently. I braced myself, expecting a tirade about the ruined Hawaii trip, but instead, Amanda's tone was soft and apologetic. "I owe you an apology, Isabella," she began, catching me off guard. As she spoke, she revealed more about Larry's patterns, including his first marriage, which had ended due to similar issues. "When we got back from Hawaii and I learned the truth about how he lied and stole from you, I was devastated," Amanda confessed. She had kicked him out, refusing to enable his behavior any longer. A wave of empathy washed over me for this woman who had raised Larry, always hoping he would change. "It's not your fault, Amanda," I assured her softly.
"You didn't know."
"Still, I'm so sorry for what he put you through," she replied. "You didn't deserve any of it." After we hung up, I sat in silence, processing the conversation. It was oddly comforting to know I wasn't alone in being let down by Larry. In the weeks that followed, he made several attempts to reconcile, showing up at my office with flowers and waiting outside my apartment, each time pleading for another chance. However, I remained firm in my resolve, ready to move forward on my terms. I made a firm decision not to let Larry back into my life, knowing that his return would likely restart a cycle of disappointment and financial strain. As time passed, I settled into a new routine without the burden of his expenses. This newfound financial stability allowed me to focus wholeheartedly on my dental practice. I said goodbye to the part-time clinic job and redirected all my energy into expanding my own business. To enhance my practice's growth, I engaged a marketing consultant, and soon my patient list began to increase steadily. 6 months after filing for divorce, the influx of patients necessitated hiring 2 additional dentists to manage the growing workload. It was incredibly fulfilling to watch my small practice thrive, a tangible testament to my dedication and hard work. A year after Larry had left, I celebrated a significant milestone. I made the final payment on my business loan. To mark this achievement, I treated myself to a weekend getaway at a spa resort nearby, an indulgence I had always dreamed about but never pursued. Relaxing by the pool with a fruity cocktail in hand, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed for the better. Now, sitting in my expanded office and reviewing plans for an additional wing to house more specialists, I feel a profound sense of pride in how far I've come. The past 3 years have been a transformative journey of self-discovery and personal growth. I've learned to value my worth, trust my instincts, and never settle for anything less than what I deserve. Looking forward, I'm filled with optimism. Whatever the future holds, I am confident in my ability to face it with strength and wisdom. My story is far from over. In many ways, it feels as though it's just beginning.